I don't think you have to hit rock bottom. I think you just got to love yourself enough to really be able to look at yourself in your own illumination, in your own light, and say, okay, wait a minute. And
that was Jeffrey Godfrey, who works with Ideal Option, a national organization offering medical assisted treatment. Today, Jeff and I are looking at the problem of admitting we have a problem. I'm your host, Martin John, the Recovery Mentor, and I want to welcome you to the Recover Yourself podcast, where we address topics you'll face while on a journey to recovering yourself. This podcast is all about expanding the definition and scope of how we understand both addiction and recovery. I'm interested in doing this so everyone has an opportunity to recover themselves. This way, no matter where you are on that journey, there is a place for you here. In the early days of our addiction, we may have seen signs of what's to come, but due to stigma, shame, or any number of other things, we may have chose to just not linger there. But that messaging, that call of, I don't think this is going to end well, is where we must linger. It's not easy to admit we have a problem at any stage. And whether you are in recovery or not, we all have things in our lives that we feel we can regulate better. So why not admit we're not regulating them well now, while we still can institute changes relatively easily? Jeffrey, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat.
I so appreciate you inviting me. This is exciting.
Now you're someone that, can you talk to me a little bit about your experience with substance abuse or addiction?
I don't have a history of substance use disorder.
Right.
I work with a ton of people who do, and I learn every day with them.
We're going to be talking about trying to cut off problems that are starting. Like the Tao states that, a problem is most easily solved when it's young. Right.
Yeah.
And the longer we have a problem, the more it takes root in our lives.
And so it becomes ingrained, doesn't it? And that ingraining becomes comfortable. And I see that all the time. And it's funny, the people with only a few months who have recognized, holy crap, man, I better do something, because I had a buddy OD and they're dead. And I just had a 16-year-old the other day saying, you know what? Yeah, I've been doing this for about 3 months and we're doing well together.
Yeah. And that's an important part. Like, when we can admit we have a problem, and that starts as just a little thought in our head first. But there's so much around us, I think, that tells us that we don't have a problem, like the rigid definitions of the DSM-5. So when you're dealing with people that are facing drug and alcohol addiction and they're getting that under control, what other problems are they experiencing popping up in their lives?
So many times we work on adverse childhood events, stuff that happened way back when, that kind of set the stage, perhaps, and wanted them to get rid of the pain of whatever that trauma was, and then to ignore the scar tissue that's causing a poor movement forward in their lives. The scar tissue can be ethereal.
So what does that mean? Like the scar tissue, how does that present itself in one's life?
Okay, so with any types of PTSD, depression, paralyzing inability to all of a sudden, anything will make one of my wonderful patients really anxious, and it's like that anxiety. And it all looks, it has a wonderful honesty when people look at me and they say, yeah, Jeff, I hear what you're saying, and I really want to talk about something that happened in the past, or my anxiety, or my inability to sleep, or all those kind of symptoms of the healing aspect. So we know in the human body, every time you lacerate your skin, right? And you take good care of it, you clean it out, it doesn't get infected, right? And the body wants homeostasis, so it knits itself together. But isn't it always that scar leaves an impression that's a little thicker, a little more raised, a little not as malleable as the skin used to be? Mm-hmm. But especially, I used to work in a burn center. And so working with my people who had burned joints, right? We had to work through it and break down the scar tissue to make it more malleable. Right. And so that's kind of what I love doing, to watch people heal, but to take that healing and using that as strength and make it more malleable. So they're able to look at themselves with love and like, oh crap, I'm going down the wrong path again. Holy crap. You know what? I gotta hit this contingency now.
So as people are kind of like coping with these early days of sobriety, and they're going to run across these triggers that cause them to use other things to replace, because it's so uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to deal with the issues that caused you to use. So when is a good time for someone that's in early recovery to start questioning, should I cut back on my sugar intake? Should I cut back on my cigarette use? Like, where is that conversation?
I think that conversation is immediate, put it there, put it out there. And it's like, okay, so we'll deal with it. That's why I love the self-assessment of, okay, I do a lot of Suboxone, right? And so I have this wonderful, I think rituals are important. So, you wake up in the morning, you make your bed, you drink your 16 to 32 ounces of warm freaking water, right? To dilate the blood vessels in your mouth and to hydrate yourself and get more serotonin in your gut to go to your brain. Then you pop the Suboxone in. So now I want, I want you to be successful. I want you to be happy. And Suboxone tastes like shit. All right, come on, we all know that. But it's a chemo. And so when my patients are like, oh my God, so how do I keep it in? All right, journal. And so you start journaling, and eventually you start looking at those triggers, and you develop your own pathway and your own field book, guidebook to say, okay, I got this trigger. And then, oh yeah, it was the lollipops and the suckers that I take my drugs with. So every time but I'm still pounding down the suckers because I'm just doing the sugar because it felt so natural because I got rid of all the other crap, right? So I need something great, and that love of self that comes out in a thought out document when you're quiet and you're into yourself, you're doing Suboxone, all right, you got that in there, and you're just journaling. So you got cognition, emotion through fine motor skills, and it then connects everything. And I've found so much love that they bring me, hey Jeff, read this, and so it's a self-discovery. And then it's like, hey, I see what you wrote in your journal that you're eating a crap ton of brownies. You're making the brownies, and right? So what do you think? How's that making you feel? What do you? Oh yeah, I'm just substituting. All right, so what? So if we do it kind of in this wonderful, fluid manner, that every time they know, we'll catch up from last week or 2 weeks ago, or however they are in their meeting with me or other providers, and that you catch up from the same thing. So it's okay to start right in the beginning to develop a plan for see where it's going to look in a year.
If you're journaling, once you start to see something coming up like, oh, I'm eating brownies 4 times a week or whatever, and that's just kind of opening up to be aware that that's the case, we could address it before it's a problem.
Exactly.
Because we have such a strong definition of addiction, how do the people that you see in your practice see the word, and how does that possibly keep them hurting?
It's stigmatizing, and stigma is really kind of at the key of what's killing a bunch of overdoses and people continue to use whatever. You look at and you call yourself an addict, it then categorizes you. So but if you love yourself enough to say, okay, these are some of the key notes that I hear. It's like listening to a symphony tuning itself up. I'm really tired of the shit. I'm so tired. I don't want to go to jail again. I lost my kids. I'm ready to end it. This is stupid. I mean, how many people look at me and they sit there, I'm stupid for doing, you're not stupid. With the best of your ability, you were trying to self-medicate something. I get that. When you start seeing, all right, we're going to break down a little bit of stigma. It's education, it's laughter, it's joy, and it's like, okay, let's look at yourself. And if they know that Jeff ain't going to make a judgment, right, that it's okay to talk about something that's really, really shitty looking. All right, let's put it out there and let's see how we can turn it around. And that's the human condition. So I believe that it's a philosophical thing. It's a kind, compassionate, brother love kind of thing. And so as we work through addiction, the word, I don't want to use it anymore. It's okay. I hear you. You go to AA. I'm an addict. I've been an addict for 15 years. Okay, fine. We know that. But you're a person, and you're a person that's getting better. And you know what? I love myself more because I looked at some stuff and you know what? It made sense. And now I feel different. And that it's that difference. It's kind of getting ready to go on that beautiful excursion into something new, that if you're faithful to yourself and you love yourself, you got some strength. Okay, you may fall down, big whoop. That's how we treat relapse in these offices here. All right, big whoop. You ain't dead. I can't fix dead. I can work a lot with massaging those scars, but having the scar that's still knitting means you're still alive.
Most of the people that come to your organization, or most of the people that you see as clients, how do they get there? Like, what is the linchpin that brings them in? What got them to go get help?
Boy, I could give you the flippant answer. It's their feet. They walk through the front door, but you.
Do they walk through the front door on their own accord?
Many do. Many have. This is kind of
Most
the last
or
stop.
Many?
I'm going to say many. I'm going to say that I have a gamut, a full boat. I've got parents that bring kids in kicking and screaming.
Mm-hmm.
I've got somebody who's, the 3 strikes and you're out thing with the legal system. I've got a big shout out to any of the cities where I work that has a co-ed team. It's called Community Outreach and Enforcement Team. It's a police officer and a social worker, and they talk and on a rainy Saturday, I've gotten calls. Hey, Jeff, we got, Billy Bob over here, and he's finally ready to go talk to you. Great. Give me 2 hours to drive down, from Anacortes into Everett, and I'll be there. And we work. So we got that. We also have people who are just like, man, I'm afraid my best friend died. And I'm scared to death. Mm-hmm. Or I'm just tired. I really, man, I look at that and it's like when they open their heart to say, I'm just freaking tired of this shit.
Right.
I just open my heart. It's like, okay, here's a respite. That's what a healer does. It fluffs up the bed so you can get some rest.
No. So my big question then is, how do we get people to, like, I don't want people to get to a point where they need to get so tired in order to get into a space. And we're here talking, and the point is how to get to know and admit you have a problem to find help before you're being brought in by the police, you're facing OD, you've been through the courts, like you're coming and kicking and screaming by your parents. Like, this is about finding your problem before it's so obvious that, like, you're the last to know.
Bingo. And I think if we could, all of us that are a part of this, to defeat stigma, I think stigma is making people fearful, and then it has to be the final straw that breaks the camel's back, right?
We got to go to rock bottom because we don't want to face the stigma before we get there.
That's what I think.
Like the scales have to be so uneven that I'm willing to face what we call stigma.
Yeah, because remember, the amygdala and hippocampus is in charge of 5 things: pain or pleasure, fight or flight, and faulty memory, right? So it's like the guy who said when he read his journal, he says, yeah, I thought it was okay because I didn't have enough gas. I had to turn my car off and wait 3 hours for my dealer to show up at the back of the 7-Eleven, right? Then that was good, right? But when he looked at it finally in clarity of thought and love of self, he says, oh yeah, I'm not there anymore. I don't want to do that. Okay, great. So where did he realize? And in so many of the AA, and the 12 steps, you got to hit rock bottom. And I hear you. I don't think you have to hit rock bottom. I think you just got to love yourself enough to really be able to look at yourself in your own illumination, in your own light, and say, okay, wait a minute. And you know, it's been lately more of my younger people who have a shorter run in their addiction, 3 months, right? And just like you said, the Taoist thought, you know, deal with the problem while it's still an infant, and you can change it. I think they haven't lost that love of self. They haven't shamed themselves into, I'm going to ignore this. And so I can lose my self-shame by popping on a whole bunch of substances, right? And so let's figure out how we can create a national consortium of, let's look at ourselves. Let's love one another. Let's keep the stigma out of there. And then say, you know what? I've got to assess myself on a daily basis, and I got to be okay with it.
Right. And I think a big, like, you know, like you used the word ignore, like what a great word, because like that's once we see that there is a problem, once we see that there's something that we don't want to face, one of the first things I think we do is ignore, ignore. What have you seen are really easy things for people to ignore that get out of control?
Some of the things that I've seen is like, well, I wasn't really shoplifting. I was with those guys and I got caught up in it. And they just happened to...
So that looks at like ignoring some reality.
Yeah. And that's what it is. You ignore reality, right? I know the fentanyl, if I get an overdose of fentanyl, I'm going to die. But I'm not dead, so I can ignore the fact that the potential's out there. I ignore the potential. There are so many wonderful nuances with these wonderful patients that sit across from me when we're talking, and then all of a sudden they have this epiphany. They go, "Oh shit, I just ignored that." You know, I love the word culpability. Are you willing to make yourself responsible? And are you willing to love yourself enough to see that, oh yeah, I did that, and let's make it better, you know? And I can't remember who said this, but it's like, once you recognize you made the mistake, you can fix it. So thank God you made the mistake, you saw it, and you can fix it. If somebody else did it to you, there ain't much you can do about that other person, you know?
Right. Once you stop victimizing yourself to the situations that you ignore, you're no longer a victim, right?
Yeah, exactly. What a great turn of phrase you just had there, Martin. Wow.
So this whole conversation is, you know, like geared toward this idea of culpability. I like that you use that word as well, because it's like we want to admit, we want to be able to face our problems before they're so bad that other people can recognize them. And so, you know, a large part of that, you know, could be not wanting to face stigma. I don't know if that's true or not really, because, you know, like, you know, I don't know that stigma comes from outside of us. I think it comes from inside of us. That's my opinion. This probably won't get put into the interview, but like stigma, we create it. And this is why I don't think we can ever get rid of stigma.
Well, can I take umbrage with that?
Please.
I think it's a bilateral kind of thing among the entities that we are. Because yes, we have our own self-stigma, but then there's also the societal. So if you match what you know they think about you, and you parrot that,
it's choice.
It's right. It's the choice, but you were comfortable with it. You know, how many of us?
I mean,
you and I were. Yeah, right. When we were kids, how often did you want to really shock the crap out of your parents? You know, and so you would, right? Like with me, long hair in the '60s, right?
Right. Yeah.
But then you get the song sign everywhere. So I tucked my hair up under my hat, and you know, me working for you, right? But you were expecting, you thought something would happen, so you wear that mantle. Hey, I was right. I'm brilliant. Yeah, you know, the stigma is out there.
You showed me exactly what I was looking for.
Exactly.
So it's not out there. Like that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's
Like,
all within us,
right,
yet, right. And you build up, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
right. And
Yeah,
and and if we can approach every situation with an open heart and an open mind, and from this place of like being respectful of self, those things can fall away. Like I have found even that we are iffy about our ability to let stigma go. And again, we probably won't be putting this in, but like just having fun chatting. So one of the things is child sexual abuse, right? Like people who abuse children sexually um have stigma, and nobody is asking them to drop that stigma.
right.
Nobody. Everybody wants them to hold on to that stigma, and everyone wants them to feel bad about that. But we need to be able to drop that so that we don't create monsters in our society.
Exactly.
That way we have conversations that are actually worth having about child sexual abuse, because we're afraid to have those conversations because they're not comfortable. Right?
Right.
We're afraid to have conversations about what we do about people who are driven to have sexual relations with children.
Yes, and that brings us to the whole other thing about mental health, and we are afraid to open that Pandora's box because we've been so inculcated with, well, you can't fix those people. But
Because
what
they're
if the
monsters.
healing, right?
They're
Because they're
not human, right?
monsters,
We are
right?
able to put them in. Well, those are those people.
Exactly. And if you look at Nazi Germany, that's exactly what happened.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to marginalize and dehumanize, and after a while, I suspect that many of the Jews that were thrown into prison camps and other people, the gypsies and the trade union, whatever, they were so beaten down that they looked the part
Right.
of being dehuman.
And that was the plan, like
Yeah,
that was,
that
yeah.
was
And
that
so
was the
that's
plan.
all that's all a very big part of it. So when we're talking about this, like I believe, when you have a maladjusted sort of affinity for something, whether that's drugs, alcohol, or whatnot, that internal conversation that we pick up from society, which will create as stigma,
Mhm.
what ends up happening within your body is like you move towards it even more, because you don't have a way of expelling that pressure, and so you
Exactly.
don't know how to deal with it. And I want to find, how can we overcome stigma as an individual, not as a society,
Right. Right.
because the individual is the one that needs to do the work.
Exactly.
So if we're out there and we have stigma about eating ice cream or taking smack or whatever, like what's the question that we can ask ourselves that will like allow us to relieve some of that pressure so that we can go get help, and it doesn't have to be a police officer talking to us for 6 weeks before we make the decision.
Right. So that to me is the absolute basis of this whole show. And what I've seen, and I can only use my experience with successful patients, returning patients, and it is that wonderful mind ability to be human, to accept yourself. And I keep going back to the word love. I know it sounds a little storied, but you know what? There is the aspect of, the love of self to accept all your dents, dings, dirts, and wonderful golden pieces too. You're these complex, wonderful human. And I used to tell all my patients that you are a thread in the tapestry of life. And so value that thread, no matter how burnished, tarnished, or brilliant it may be in certain places, you are still integral to you as a part of the whole. And, I believe this world would be diminished with any number of people that are extinguished from the world. So how do we urge people to just it would be wonderful to have a public health flash advertisement say, if you're feeling bad about yourself and you're thinking about going from marijuana to alcohol or from ice cream to whatever, it doesn't matter. Why don't you talk to this 1-800 number? It's the anti-stigma number. It's like, let's talk. Where are you on your own continuum? And you can change your own continuum, and we can work with the things that you feel are insurmountable. How about, challenges are just challenges, and once you surpass them, don't you feel really good about yourself?
Mm-hmm.
It's cathartic.
Yeah. So let me drop a word on you. I'm gonna say curious. Like, the idea of loving yourself is great, and I'm like that's the point of everything that we do, I think, is to move forward. And one thing that I always really like to look at is like, how can you be more curious? Right? Because what's happening to, I think, a lot of people that are holding on to stigma is they're approaching the question with judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And if we can approach the question more with a curiosity, and we can just be like, I don't like that I eat this many brownies every day. All right, great. Now ask yourself, why do you eat that many brownies every day? Like, without being judgmental, is like, I can't. You can eat 6 brownies a day. That's fine. Now, why are you doing it? Like,
okay.
Like, go on.
I hope you don't think I'm interrupting you, but,
No, please.
The word why kind of relegates itself to that stigma. Why did you do that? What? And so maybe
that's judgment versus curiosity.
Yes. Right. So instead of asking yourself, why are you eating the 6 brownies, is
why is just a word. Yeah. How's it make you feel? That's great. Like, if you were asking the question why through a curious mind versus why did you do that? Like, that's the point. Like, are we approaching it through judgment, or are we approaching it through curiosity?
Right. And sometimes, don't you agree that folks will say, if I'm the guy sitting on one side of the desk and you're the guy on the other side of the desk, and it's that kind of chess game of, when I ask the word why, instead of, I would really like to know, tell me more, tell me more, discuss describe. And when people describe stuff, they will give a camouflaged word that then you can say, oh, wait a minute, it's that joyous chocolate trickling down the back of your throat as you describe. So how can we make that joyous feeling continued without having to do 6 at one sitting? I don't know. And that becomes our currency of interaction with ourselves. And by doing that, I do get a lot of my patients, a lot of my audience say, you know what, you really don't, I don't feel judgment. I come into this and yeah, and you have the same ability. It's how we interact and how we portray ourselves and feel about ourselves as that broadcasts out to other people in our purview.
When I talk about like approaching something from a curiosity standpoint and like asking the question why, and I see your point, like, most people kind of have this kind of why as a why did you do that, and I don't have an answer. It's like, well, when you're curious and not under the stress of a time constraint, under the stress of a judgment, I kind of feel like you go, I did it because I wasn't hungry. I just felt lonely.
Yeah.
Like, and then all of a sudden we find that when we kind of go into, like, I feel like, when we go into the conversation of like, what did it feel like? We immediately go back to reliving the situation. And because that situation is attached to an addiction, right? Like that amazing chocolate, sugar, whatever, like, we immediately start to feel that and then get cravings again to do that again, which is why I'm just like, well, what's behind it, right? What's behind it in a curious way? If you approach this with judgment, if you approach this with like, you were wrong, well, you're not finding an answer, right? Like, you're going to find another response. And that's the way to continue kind of pushing your like stigma.
Then you build that wall, right? Because of your perception of the other person. I mean, okay, so you're 14 and you got into your ma's car and you drove it and you got caught. And the first thing that mom and dad said, why did you take the car? Well, duh, I wanted to drive, right?
From a curious standpoint, we can have that answer.
Right. But it's like, duh, why did you even ask me that in front of the cop? Why? You know, my mom used to say this great thing, Mom, I'm giving you an homage here. Because, son, why is a crooked letter? You know, when I would try to ask her, wait, Mom, I'm watching Johnny Quest. Why do you have me cleaning out the gutters right now? Why? Well, son, because why is a crooked letter? Oh my God, really? That answered the question? Are you kidding me? Right? And so I have this kind of antithesis. This kind
I hear that. Yeah.
Right?
You're being triggered by the word why. That's what's going on.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. Nail on the head there.
For, you know, anytime that we get triggered like that, and we kind of like just kind of respond in a way that is right, because we go from you know, like, this is again technical stuff, but we go from being like, hey, everything's cool, to like, we got our blinders on, we've been triggered, now we have one point to make, and everything else kind of falls to the wayside, right? Like, we've really kind of excited that animal kind of hippocampus, right? And then all of a sudden, right, like, we have to be able to be curious enough to go back and say, I really gotta I wonder why, like in your case, why does it trigger you that she said that? Probably, like, just if I were to just off the top of my head, because you feel like you're being dismissed, right? All of a sudden, you're feeling dismissed, and you have ways to attach, like, so your trigger then kind of moves into this space of like, I feel dismissed, so I can't use the word why. Nothing wrong with the motherfucking word why. Like we can utilize it. Like, that wasn't my point. Wasn't ask the question why. My point was approach it from curiosity. You cannot hear why from a curious space because you're being dismissed from a space of judgment.
And I'm going to, right. And Martin, I'm going to pose to you. I think some of my success is the rapport and the building of people describing to me, because I am curious. Right. And they should be curious. And we should have this curiosity together to see where it's going to go. You know, it's nice that no more people will die from fentanyl. Will it happen this year? Absolutely not. However, curiosity, if we can deal with one person who engages that curiosity pathway and breaks through the stigmatizing, the wall of ignorance, of ignoring things, you know, with more heartfelt openness. And so I'm going to pose to you that my visceral reaction, right, to the word why caused me to just kind of use different words in my practice and so in the long scheme of things, in a very short television interview, you got it, buddy. You bing, ding, 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 nail on the head. Brilliant intuition. And yet it broadens a whole other thing. And so by using that curiosity, doesn't our
you're speaking like an addict. Sorry. I'm going to cut you off right there because you're you're telling me that you opened your world up by closing it off. That's you're saying I utilized other words which were always there, but because of this block that you have in your system, you're saying it's good that you had that block because you were able to utilize other words.
Right.
And it's but wouldn't. Like the point of this is, wouldn't everything have been open if that block wasn't there? If you were able to love yourself through that, wouldn't you have been able to find more ways of communicating?
Sure. And as you look, as people mature, right, there is an experiential portion there. Right?
Absolutely. It's not. There's no endpoint.
Right, and I do use the word why too.
Yeah, of course you do. We can't. Like,
Right,
come on.
right,
Like, it's like, you know.
right.
But I just wanted to cut you off because it's like, once we
Yeah,
start saying yes, it's good that I did this. Well, you're here. Yes, of course it is. But we don't
right.
want to. That is ignoring, right? As soon as we tell ourselves the story, we start ignoring, and that is
Yes.
because we have stigma attached to, oh, I'm in a healing position and then I just got called out or whatever. I didn't
Yep.
see this or I didn't work on it. Like,
Yep.
stop your stigma. Stop it right here. Stop it right now. And the only way to do that is to approach it from curiosity, not judgment.
Right, and that's what's killing so many darn people is their own stigma. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I find this has been absolutely brilliant to, to get and do that because, I really try to remind myself every day, let me just be aware enough of myself to be open to hear a nuance of somebody else that's hurting too, because I venture to ask you, is there a human being out there that's not hurting from something? Is there that unique person?
I would not, like, the Buddhists say life is suffering, right? Like, and so I think everybody is hurting. Like I have to do that same work every motherfucking day. Like you got to do it every day. I got to do it. If we can all approach our lives from a space of curiosity and continue stepping forward and realize that our jobs are not our lives, but our lives and who we are our lives. And we got to utilize everything at our disposal to be able to continue being ourselves and recovering ourselves.
But Martin, I also believe that we close down certain aspects, like I can't do math. And so how can I go back to school? But wait a minute, you were doing fractions with your heroin and the money and the this and the that. Why? Really? You're really good at math, or whatever it is. And it's this self-imposed stigma of what I can't do. And I think curiosity in a scientific dialectical imperative kind of thing is, okay, so here's the hard and fast thesis, but I don't think that. And so now let's get a synthesis. And I love that with what we're generating here. And I think I love how you put, I needed this today to figure out where I was going to put stigma. And I've been so often lately putting it out there. It's them. Mm-hmm. No, you're absolutely right. And it's all of us. And let's be curious on how to look at it in a different way.
You can be curious about something without having an answer. You cannot be judgmental about something without having an answer, because a judgment is an answer, and it's usually saying that you are wrong. And the thing is that, like, if you're curious about why you're eating a pint of ice cream every day, or why you're, or what, what you're doing with your free time or whatever, if you're just curious about it and just be like, that's interesting, and move on. Who fucking cares?
Right, and that opens the door to a whole bunch of other stuff.
Yeah, and then you can be like, oh, okay, that's all right. It's all right that I got triggered. It's all right that I got angry. It's all right that I punched that guy in the face. And like if you ask yourself, well, would I do that again? Do you get curious about that? If you get curious, you can be like, maybe I'm glad I did it, but I don't want to do it again. I'm glad I did it at the moment. But like, now that I'm beyond it, like, I want to be able to move on, and that's okay. Right. We've all fucked up. Like, it's all right. We're gonna fuck up. But if it's in the
job description,
right? If you fuck up and don't go back and be curious about what made you want to fuck up, or what made you fuck up, or why you think you fucked up at all, like, then that's the only way that you can kind of cheat yourself, is by not looking at it.
Right. And you in your journey have had these epiphanal moments. I can hear it in your voice, and how how excited you get. And I'm
good at what I do.
and it's really incumbent upon us who want to see healing, whether we heal ourselves or heal others, or just the healing of society throughout. When the curiosity closes down, it was so traumatizing. I don't want to go there. Okay.
That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Like asking
Right.
yourself, like, and then continuing to be curious and asking yourself, well, am I judging myself because of that? Or, like just asking simple questions that kind of beat around the bush, because what you do is every answer gets you one step closer to that which you are traumatized by. Traumatized by.
Why?
Like we've evolved as a species. We've evolved as mankind. Like there's a lot that's that, and we're moving into a space where I believe we are closer. The veil is thinner, so we are closer to a space where we can stop these physical sort of problems before they become physical maladies, physical things that really bring us back.
Right, and so that brings the point of, will we evolve into more self-aware and find the problematic whatever before it even ever becomes a problem?
I really appreciate your time with me. It's been a lot of fun. I don't know what we covered. I mean, I'm excited to go back and watch it and start editing it down. So yeah, thank you.
Nobody needs, nor do we like it when others see those things within us that we're trying to hide. I mean, we know they exist, and we're often just hoping to stave off other people noticing. And if they do, and happen to mention it, God help them. When we capitulate to our own internal stigma and shame, when our problems are small, or in the early days of our flirting with whatever may one day become a problem, we're just fighting ourselves. And what's the end goal there? You can find links to everything Jeff and Ideal Option has to offer in the description of this episode. Please rate and review this podcast and/or leave comments for this episode to help me better create content for you. Support this show at anchor.fm or support me and my work at Patreon, where you'll get access to unedited content as well as writings and one-on-one access to supporter group portrait sessions with me. I host workshops regularly, which are open to the public, but also provide professional NADAC CEs. I take a limited number of one-on-one clients every month, so contact me for more information on any of that at martinjohn.com. I also accept financial support through Venmo at martinjohn_Garcia, so if you benefit from listening to this content, please consider supporting my efforts. Thank you for listening to the Recover Yourself podcast, and until next time, keep recovering yourself.